Welcome everyone to Oracle Code in Singapore. My name's Connor McDonald with the developer community. We're in the Dev Lounge. Everyone's breaking for coffee at the moment, but I'm catching up with Morten Egan, who's one of the speakers here. Morten, tell us where you're from, who you are, and what do you do?
So originally I'm from Denmark, but got hired by Oracle around 18, 19 and moved to the States to work for at the headquarters in development on a small project called Raw Iron, which I call sort of the precursor to the engineered systems,
Okay.
but just for small mom and pop shops instead of the big machines we have today.
Okay. So, well, I'll explore the history. So Raw Iron, tell me about that. What was Raw Iron about?
So Raw Iron was actually an attempt to build a autonomous database running on Linux. And so this is back in 99, so it's way back. Meant for the small shops that needed a small database running for their financial system or small logistics or whatever. And basically all you needed was to change the backup tape. There was a physical backup tape in the machine from Dell, I think we partnered with back then, running Oracle 8i. And so every day you just had to go and change the tape for the backup, and you had your Oracle database. No terminal access. The only access you had was SQLnet and Enterprise Manager.
Oh, cool. It's funny how Oracle has the history of inventing things almost you could maybe think of prematurely, but I think the vision is there. Do you remember network computers?
Yes, I do.
The concept of just a browser, and everyone's like, oh, that'll never catch on. Then you look at every tablet nowadays, and we just needed Android or iOS to come along.
Yes, and actually the OS install on Raw Iron was based on the first drop of the network computer install.
Oh, cool.
So it all ties together.
Okay, so your talk is on synthesizing test data.
Yes.
Why do we need to synthesize test data? Why not just copy data from production? What are some of the issues, and what are some of the things that you've discovered that have motivated you to do this talk?
So part of it is I've recently, or not recently, but 4 years ago, I started working in the financial industry. And I work in a special section of the financial industry, which is, the investment banking. Okay. So we have in production a lot of data that you can't just move it back in and test on it, right? That's completely illegal because it's customer data. But it's also difficult to say, oh, what should be masked? What can we actually take back? Because you can infer stuff from, you would think, okay, let's mask the names, mask the passport numbers, whatever is in there, but we'll take back stuff like instrument IDs and amounts. So you can start inferring trades from those numbers as well. So you basically, what I can take back from production, and I have zero access to production, is I can probably take the row IDs of a table, and that's basically what I can take back. So historically, people have done, enter manually data. So you have 2 rows in the orders table and 1 row in the customer table, which is kind of irritating because you can't really do tests. Or they go the other way and they design the typical 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, A, or, the classic way of masking or redacting. And I just feel as a developer, part of the thing that makes it exciting to develop an application is to see what you get out of it. Okay. And if you have real lifelike data in your demos or in your sprints or whatever we want to call it today, it feels more real when you develop.
And it's true. I remember when data redaction came out from Oracle, people were saying, oh, well, it's not secure. And I always said, redaction is not about security.
No.
Because even if you mask someone's credit card number, if you have access to the SQL, you can simply work through all the permutations until it says, yes, I've got a hit. It doesn't matter if the data is redacted. You can still hit it. And I imagine with investment banking, I suppose some of those details are somewhat confidential, I'd imagine.
Yes, they are. Yeah. So I actually look at redaction and masking as a complement to your production applications and not as a complement to moving data back into test.
It's like that avoiding what I would call inadvertent seeing of data. I worked for West Australian Police for a while, and we had a thing where if you actually saw someone's details on screen, you could be prosecuted for that.
Yep.
And so every whereas often people say we want to audit a select statement, at police we would actually audit what was on the screen.
Yeah.
And so, if you saw some criminal's details and you weren't on that case, you were in big trouble. So I was reading your blog, and your blog is codemonth.dk. There's a little shout out to the blog.
Yeah.
I saw this thing called Random Ninja. Tell me about that.
So that was the basis of, I started on a project in the bank, and I had to create basically a table that contained stuff like credit card numbers and credit card transactions to simulate an app we were building. And so I started just putting in numbers, but pretty quickly, I failed in my test because we actually had a validation of the number. Is it a credit card number? Does it go through the checks and the checksums? So I started building just a generator for credit card numbers, which is easy. You can go on Wikipedia, you have the list of the different providers, and Visa starts from like 40, 50 to 40, 80 something, whatever. It changes all the time. So I started generating that, and then I had also the checksum function for validating a credit card. And then I started having to produce ISINs, which is like instrument identifiers, so a stock or a bond. All of these instruments you can trade in financial world have an ID, and that's called an ISIN. Most have an ISIN. So I had to build an ISIN generator, and then I suddenly started thinking, hey, you know what? All of this, let's put it together in one big library. So if you, inspiration for this one came from a Perl and I think a Ruby library, which I do mention on my blog as well. And it's just to create lifelike random data. So underneath it all, it's just DBMS random.
Just generating stuff out. One thing I did notice, you mentioned DBMS random. One thing I noticed from your blog is you have a lot of utilities and a lot of descriptions about either supplied packages or stuff you built yourself in PL SQL.
Yeah.
What's the appeal of PL SQL? Why not build it in Java or something else? Where do you see PL SQL sitting in the world of application development?
So to me, it's I started out on Oracle and PL SQL, so it's kind of like the first language. It's there. In later years, what I've seen is that I don't think people realize how much you can actually do in PL SQL. And you have these cool new languages that comes out, and people say, oh, now we can do this and that and X and Y. And if you sit back and think just for about, a minute or two, you can actually say, hey, that functionality I can build in PL SQL. Sometimes it might not be, something that will work in production because it's a language that's, so stuff like massive text parsing. Right? I have a part of the random utility is to create lifelike looking text with real words. So for that you need to build what's called a Markov chain of a text input. And maybe PL SQL aren't the fastest for that, right? But you can still build everything. And I did a talk with Stephen Forrestin.
That was an interview on the
OD Tuck one. Yeah. And I basically said, you have a base of maybe 10, 15 packages in PL SQL, and with those you can build everything. I've seen terminal emulators, VT220 built in PL SQL. We have FTP clients, we have SSH clients. My own media center back home is actually written in PL SQL.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
So, you should put that on GitHub and
yes,
or commercialize it. Charge a license fee.
Yeah, I'll just give it away, I think.
Obviously, I'm a PL SQL junkie as well, and I've found that, especially now that it's becoming less obvious where your infrastructure is. In the great cloud world, you have an app server. It could be in Singapore. A database could be in Singapore. It could be in America. It could be anywhere.
Yeah.
And so latency is becoming king. And PL SQL runs about as close to the data as anything possibly can. Yeah. I noticed your, I think it's Twitter handle is KidRack.
Yes.
Where does that come from?
So the original name of KidRack was from back in Open World 2004, 5, somewhere around there when it was in Copenhagen.
Oh, okay.
Or was it even before that maybe, where James Morrill and the Oak Table group built the laptop rack.
Laptop rack cluster.
Laptop rack cluster, yeah. I think we got up to like 13 or 15 nodes.
Yes.
Yeah. And so back then I was really, really young. So, Kid Rock went to Kid Rack.
Okay.
And so I joined Twitter early on when it started, and I just kept the Kid Rack pseudonym.
I do remember, I suppose, perhaps a moment of infamy for you was the installation of Rack using only your nose.
Yes. Yeah. So go on YouTube and look for, I think it's called Unconventional Oracle Install. So you will find me installing Oracle just using my nose, wearing a straitjacket. Yes.
Okay, we're just about out of time, Morten, and you can hear the bells ringing, which is telling people to go back in the room. Before we do that, I'm going to give you 30 seconds to look straight down the barrel. And what is your advice to attendees tomorrow when they leave the conference? What should they do tomorrow in terms of improving their developer skills?
So to me, it's basically all about trying stuff out. So all my libraries, all the utilities I built, is about reading something on the internet, a good idea, a piece of code, and I say I want to try and build that. I choose PL SQL because I like the language, and like Connor said, it's close to the database. And just sit down and try. And if you will fail 10, 100 times, and I do that every single day. But I fail with something new every day. So always make new mistakes, and that's the only way to learn. And always make new mistakes.
No worries. Thank you very much for your time, Morten.
Thank you, Connor.
Stay tuned the rest of the day, folks. We'll be streaming more interviews throughout the day, hopefully without the chimes in the background to upset you all. If you're watching this afterwards on YouTube, check out the Developer YouTube channel with lots of all the code events, and I will see you soon for the next interview. See you later.